It's time for Recipe of the Day. I love that acorn squash is called acorn squash and that it looks like a big acorn. I also love the soft texture and that sweet nutty flavor. But my new favorite thing about acorn squash is that you can air fry it alongside its own seeds and it makes the perfect side dish. It's that soft texture, the sweet flavor, nutty, and then the little crunch of those toasted seeds. They're even better than pumpkin seeds. And I do a little mixture of maple syrup with some pumpkin pie spice drizzled on that whole thing. Oh, I cannot wait for you to try it. Here's how you make it. So you're going to start with a whole acorn squash. It's going to be between 1 and 1.5 pounds. And we usually serve 1/2 of this squash per person, but depending on your group, it might be more like 1/4 of a squash per person. Okay. So now you're going to cut the squash in half from stem end to bottom and then use a spoon to scoop out the seeds. Whether you're planning to cook the seeds or not, you need to take them out of the squash. Okay. Now set those seeds aside. I'm going to be telling you how to cook them. I'm assuming you want to because they are really, really so good, but set them aside. And then you're going to brush the acorn squash halves all over inside and out with 2 teaspoons of olive oil. So that's total 1 teaspoon per half of your squash. And then sprinkle the insides with, a few pinches of salt. It's going to be like 1/4 teaspoon total, like 1/8 of a teaspoon per half. Okay. Then you're going to put those squash halves cut side down in the air fryer basket and cook them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. Now, while those are cooking, you're going to deal with the seeds, and it's the same as dealing with pumpkin seeds. You need to separate the seeds from those stringy bits and from any flesh, get them separated from each other. I find it easiest to kind of you pull on the seeds, tugging gently, and they release from those strings, right? You're throwing away the stringy, fleshy bits and just keeping the seeds. And then I put them into a colander and give them a really good rinse under cold water, swish them around, and that seems to get the rest of that off of there. Then you're going to transfer them to some paper towel to pat them dry. And then from there, transfer them to a bowl. I do find they sometimes stick to the paper towel. So you need to use a knife or your fingers to get them off of the paper towel into the bowl. And then you're tossing them with 1/2 teaspoon of olive oil and a few pinches of salt. Now, once that squash is cooked for 10 minutes, you're going to flip it over so that it's cut side up. And then you scatter the prepared seeds around the squash. Now, I will say if your air fryer basket has big holes, you might be worrying that the seeds are going to go underneath. That actually happens with mine, and they toast underneath as well, even if they fall through the basket. But you could have used, and I should have said this earlier, sorry, a parchment paper sheet, one of the ones that's designed for the air fryer, and then they're less likely to fall through. Okay, you put that air fryer basket back into the air fryer and you cook it until the squash is fork tender and the seeds are toasted. It's going to be about 8 to 10 more minutes. While that is cooking, you can make your optional maple drizzle. Mix together a tablespoon of maple syrup and 1/8 of a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And I'll say if you want to use something other than maple syrup, you can. You could use honey or a balsamic glaze would be really nice. And then if you don't have pumpkin pie spice, you could just go in with some cinnamon or some cinnamon and ginger. Any combination of those warm fall spices is going to work great in there. 1/8 of a teaspoon total. You mix that up. And then once your squash is fork tender and those seeds are toasted, take it out, transfer it to your plates and drizzle on that maple syrup and then sprinkle the seeds on top. And it's time to dig in. I think this is going to be your new favorite thing about acorn squash too, just like me. Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is November 19th of 2024. The other place you can get this link is in our Facebook group. I post the recipe of the day link every single morning in that group, so you can always find what I'm talking about, get inspired about what you can make just right for the season. It's always there at facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.